Hello, everyone. I'm Jim. Today, we're breaking down the most recent inflation and unemployment reports from Canada and the United States. I'll explain the numbers, what they mean for both economies, and why central bank decisions in the months ahead will matter to all of us. Let's dive in. We'll start here in Canada. According to Statistics Canada, the unemployment rate rose to 7.1% in August, up from 6.9% in July. That's the highest level we've seen in this cycle and suggests the labor market is losing momentum. The job losses, about 66,000 positions were concentrated in part time work, while full time employment held mostly steady. That's an important signal that the slowdown is hitting more vulnerable workers first. On the inflation front, the headline Consumer Price Index came in at 1.9% year over year in August, up slightly from the 1.7% in July. That's just under the Bank of Canada's 2% target midpoint, but it's not low enough for the central bank to declare victory. Most importantly, the core inflation measures, such as the Bank of Canada's trimmed mean and medium CPI, remain around 3%. That tells us the underlying price pressures in the economy haven't fully eased even as the job market cools. The takeaway for Canada is clear. We're dealing with a softening labor market and moderate but persistent inflation, a challenging mix for policymakers. Now let's turn to the United States. The US labor market remains more stable. The unemployment rate in August was 4.3%, roughly unchanged from the prior month and in line with the range seen over the past year. Inflation, however, is proving stickier. The headline US Consumer Price Index rose 2.9% year over year in August, up a touch from 2.7% in July. And the core CPI, which excludes food and energy, increased 3.1% over the same period. That core figure is especially important to the Federal Reserve, which views it as a better gauge of underlying inflation pressure. The Fed has signaled that it's trying to walk a fine line, keeping monetary policy tight enough to bring inflation back down towards its 2% target, but not so tight that it pushes the economy into a downturn. Comparisons and risks. Here's the contrast. Canada is seeing more weakness in jobs, unemployment is up, while headline inflation is relatively close to target, but core prices remain elevated. The United States, by comparison, has a sturdier job market but higher and more persistent inflation. Both economies face similar risks. If inflation expectations start to rise, wage and price pressures could become harder to tame. At the same time, if central banks mistime their next moves on interest rates, they risk either prolonging inflation or triggering a sharper downturn. For Canada in particular, exposure to US trade policy and tariffs adds another layer of uncertainty on the outlook. Conclusion. To wrap up, Canada's challenge in rising unemployment alongside moderate inflation with the US is dealing with stubborn inflation despite a relatively healthy labor market. In both countries, the coming months will hinge on decisions of central banks, the direction of global energy prices, and whether businesses and households believe inflation is truly under control. Understanding these trends isn't just for economists, they affect everyone from mortgage rates to job prospects. Thanks for watching, and if you found this analysis helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe to a more depth economic comment.